Here we go. Good evening, and welcome to another Tuesday night of fun V8 racing. You're here with the SuperCars NZ boys out of the broadcasting lounge, bringing you some fantastic Gen 3 action at the wonderful Canadian Tyre Motorsport Park Raceway. Coming to you out of the broadcasting lounge on YouTube, this is Doug, and I've been joined by my good friend, who is now clot-free, Shano. How are we, mate?
Oh, fan-flippin-tastic, thanks Douglas, here at Canadian Tyre Motorsport Park, otherwise known as MoSport, for some awesome V8 action. I know Corey's disappointed to be missing out on this tonight. He was very excited about it, but unfortunately his PC has let him down and he might be out for the foreseeable future. So if anybody's got a CPU to donate to Corey, get in touch with the Broadcasting Lounge.
Yeah, we legitimately mean that. If there was anyone out there who feels that Corey's a good bugger and could do with a bit of extra support, yeah, his computer went kaput last night, and it's not in a position to be reactioned anytime soon. So yeah, it'd be good if anyone out there feels like being kind or knows anyone in the computer business. Yeah, just get in touch with us at the Broadcasting Lounge of SuperCars NZ and see what we can do. But here we are, Shano. We're with the Div 2 boys tonight.
We sure are.
And it's looking like it's going to be some fun action of racing out there, as we've seen before, historically, across the board, whether it be the V8s, the GT cars, or any other car that we've brought along to MoSport. This track often allows for some exciting racing, some hair-raising situations, and some very interesting comings together. So who knows what we're in for tonight with what I believe is a 34 lap one and one done race. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. 34 laps, just the one race tonight. So it should be very interesting to see how that's all going to go. I can tell you as well, with the fuel they've got available to them tonight, they have an estimated laps in the iRacing black box of 22.3. So they're going to have to come in for a stop at some point and grab some fuel. So when they choose to do that and how that plays out is going to be the question that everybody will be pondering right now as they go through their warm-up.
Yeah, very good. We'll have a bit of a look out there while some cars are doing the warm-up. I'm interested to see if anyone's doing any practice starts. I think it's it's one thing getting out here and doing the laps, but practice is done, qualifying is done. During this warm-up session, this is where I would be focusing the best that I could possibly do on how to get these beasts away and up and running.
Yeah, the Gen 3 cars are very tricky to get off the line. Gone are the days of being able to cheat by using the auto blip or auto clutch features and just stand on the brake, stand on the throttle, release the throttle and get away cleanly. You do have to do a clutch start with these things now, which is very tricky to get right. You have to find just the right bite point of the clutch when you launch it, and remember that you can't feel where the bite point is on a clutch that's just plugged into a computer.
Yes.
And you have to get the right throttle percentage and release the line locker to hopefully get a perfect start. But more often than not, in my experience, it's a much less than perfect start.
Yeah, it's we've seen some very interesting ones since transitioning to the Gen 3. We've seen people get off the line at a very, very quick rate. We've seen others that have gone and laid nothing but dirty 11s on the start line. We've had people that have done 90-degree turns off the start, and we've had plenty of drivers this season as well that have just gone nowhere, even backwards, Shane.
Yes, we have seen at least one driver have reverse selected at the start line and go backwards when the lights went out. So that was an interesting one. I think there was some equipment failure involved in that, but yeah. Thanks for bringing up the starts on these cars as well, because you reminded me that with me hoping to get back into racing from next Tuesday, I'm going to have to relearn how to get these things off the line, because it's been 3 months. Tonight's the first time in 3 months that I've done any laps in iRacing.
Well, there you go. And once again, yeah, you are now clot free, and that's good to hear.
It certainly was good to hear that news from my doctor that my test results came back all clear. But tonight it's about these 14 cars that we've got in Div 2. Smaller field. I think some of these guys that have been regulars in Div 2 are taking a break from this car at the moment. Certainly been a bit of a struggle for some guys and a lot of energy put into it, but we've got enough people out there anyway to put on a race, and we're going to see 14 guys have some good fun racing tonight.
Yep, certainly looking forward to it. I believe there's just over 20 in the Div 1 group tonight, so not too much dissimilar as far as grid sizing goes. But what I can guarantee is that these ones that do get up and running and underway tonight are still going to give it just as much as what we would see across at Div 1 anyway. So let's watch these lights turn off and see how these guys get underway.
Oh, he's got the jump over Phil off the start, and he's going to lead them down to turn 1 and actually pulls a bit of a gap as well. Steve Dowring going around the outside in the background. Phil has dropped to 3rd, and Steve looking to see if he can get down the inside into 2. Phil will stay in there, but Phil just carrying that momentum around to consolidate 3rd place. Tim Volk going on the attack, and Shane Edgar going side by side with him in behind as well, but they're certainly down into single file now.
Yeah, looking like Shane Edgar and Tim Volk there having probably one of the biggest battles there in the mid-pack there.
They've negotiated the hairpin cleanly on lap 1, and that's always a very tricky spot and always an action spot on lap 1 when they get down to that hairpin, that double apex tight right-hander. Tricky spot to get to by yourself, and when you do it for the first time in a bunch of cars, it's often a spot where we see lap 1 incidents, but they've managed to avoid any of that so far tonight. I've heard some tyres squealing in the background of my shot, and I think
Dan Turner.
Paul Fulton facing the wrong way. New teammate of mine, Passion Sim Racing driver. He's just rejoining the track now in the final sequence, and I think Dan potentially was involved in that as well.
Yeah, a little bit of data, so we'll be able to have a look at that one again shortly. But how about this for some racing between these guys?
Oh, there's a touch. He's going to hold it together. Good save, Tim Volk, but that's given Shane the momentum to get down the inside. Maybe a question mark over a potential bump and run there. Has he just backed out of that, given the momentum back, given the position back? He's still alongside and goes down, gets the position in the hairpin. Yeah, I do wonder whether there's a question on a bit of a bump and run on how we got the overlap there. Did he already have enough when Tim turned down on him, or is there going to be a ticket submitted and penalties dished out post-race? No live race control tonight, so if there's anything to be answered, it will have to be looked at post-race. Looking at that, I would say, given that the standard that Sean is using to police contact this season is front wheel to rear wheel being significant overlap, I don't think he was quite there on that occasion.
Yep, I'd
Yeah, I
say
certainly
it's,
don't think the front wheels were at the rear wheels there, so I think Tim was in his rights to turn down, and Shane's got the initial overlap here by unsettling him, and then he's sort of stayed side by side, hasn't he, all the way up to the hairpin and got the position.
yeah, and Shane initially did lift out of that. He certainly didn't keep pushing the question, but it didn't appear to me that Tim was quite in control of his vehicle moving forward again. It was still slipping and sliding around after having broken traction. Um, my idea was I would have thought Shane could have lifted maybe just that little bit longer, pulled, actually moved back in behind to make it clear that the intention of making that pass was done, and to try again later. So we'll let the big boys dispute that one, but yeah, I would say from what we've seen from other judgment calls made throughout the season so far, that one may have a little bit of a penalty to follow. Only if it's followed up, of course.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, that is right. The ticket has to be submitted first for race control to have a look at that one. So it might be that Tim isn't too concerned about it, and it'll all just be play on in the end. Dan Nolan in a good battle with Phil Carpenter at the moment. Dan's been able to hold on to second position after gaining that at the start, but Phil looking to put some pressure on, and Steve just in behind looking to see if he can pick up some pieces from this battle as well.
Yeah, very close, and certainly allowed that margin there for Steve to crawl in on that one as well. But at the moment, Phil Carpenter just getting pretty close to the back of Dan, who's currently sitting in second spot. Phil will be wanting to move himself all back into a better position after having lost a couple of positions there from the start. Pushing hard as he has been though, that gap has fallen away from Dan briefly, and now we look on the roof here of Steve Darren's Jigsaw entry Camaro. Keeping it nice and steady, not overworking the car too much. As you said earlier on, it's going to be a bit of a game of how you get to your pit window and what life expectancy you can drag out of the car through to the end.
Yeah, that's right. Like I said, they'll be required to get in and take some fuel at some point. They can get into the 20s on their lap value. I think I said, it was about 24 laps I said, didn't I, that they could get to. So that's 10 laps short of the end. So if you work that backwards, you could also say that pit window will open lap 10. But chances are you're going to be taking some tyres while you're doing fuel as well, as Steve just either runs a little bit wide through the right-hander of that final sequence, or thought about just putting his car offline to stick it in Phil's mirrors there and put some pressure on him. But yeah, so you would assume that they'll be changing some tyres while they're taking the fuel that they need, and you do need to figure out the strategy of how best to balance those tyres. Ideally, in a perfect world, you just stop halfway, which would obviously be 17 laps.
Yeah, I would
17
say.
laps. Yep. And then you do two 17-lap stints. That way, you're going to get the best out of each step. But of course, traffic comes into play, battles come into play, undercuts come into play, overcuts come into play.
Yeah.
That's where you've got to figure out how you're going to play the strategy. Do you come in early to try and jump a position? Do you come in late to have fresh tyres at the end against the car that you're battling? All those strategy plays that are open to you. And unlike the real thing where they've got race engineers to help them figure that out, these guys are all on their own. They've got their own brain and their own head, that's focusing on driving already, and they then have to sit there and figure out when am I going to pit.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes you go into a race, you have a plan on what you're going to do, and get a little bit upset during the race. Something might just quite happen a little bit out of your control, and it really starts making you ponder and self-doubting whether the original plan is worthwhile sticking to. And I think some people get a bit too fixated on that, and miraculously trying to come up with gaining 3 or 4 positions they lost after having a wee off moment on the track, or bits and pieces like that off the race start, and end up sacrificing it for themselves because they didn't stick to what was good. They start fudging the numbers in their head, and they come in too early and they don't have enough fuel to get them through to the end, or they go, oh, I need to save that bit of time by not taking, you know, all the tyres that I have at my disposal. Then you'll run the car very loose, and that to the end, and just watch the time deplete away from you. So sometimes these environments where we pair up together and we can chat to each other and talk through things, much like a proper race team would do, help stabilise things and look at the bigger picture. And sometimes it's just about appreciating you're not going to be able to make a big difference through a short race, and you're just going to have to keep it clean and tidy to get through to the end.
That's it. And Steve almost managed to get down the inside of Phil into turn 1 there, wasn't quite able to make it work. Steve's probably in a position where he could be thinking about, do I come in soon and look to get some clear air? Because he is very much running under that rear wing of Phil Carpenter, and he will have it in the back of his mind, can I go a little bit quicker with fresh air with some fresh tyres on as well?
That's right. Yeah, I was just about to point that out as well. Scott from Pix Productions pretty much just made that exact comment as well. Track position is key. I'd be pitting really early and try to get into that clean air. So that might be one that Steve's looking at, watching the next couple of laps come by. Certainly if he can't put Phil under any pressure to make a mistake or be able to make a move cleanly, he'd be wanting to look at what his options are moving forward. I think Dan's in a good position, but where he is at the moment, he's just lapping consistently. He's not making any gains on P1 in front of him, so I don't think there's too much at his disposal of what he can do to change that gap. But at the moment, he can see in his mirrors Phil's wandering around all over the place as he pulls him in and then drops back away again. Car is right on that edge of freedom and disaster.
Sure is. And you know who I would both love and hate to be simultaneously right now? Heath Mahone.
Wow.
Love to be in that position for the fact that he's got flexibility on strategy. He's got a 3.5 second gap. He doesn't have to jump to react to any overcut threats because he's got that cushion.
Yep.
He can basically run the best strategy for him at this point. That's why I'd love to be him. Why I'd hate to be him is when you're out front cruising like that, this is when it's very easy to get in your own head, start overthinking things, start thinking, I've got this, it's my race to throw away, and then that's generally when you do throw it away.
Yep, a lot of that again has happened to the best of us and to the worst of us over the years. You get to a point, and I know, Shane, I think you've certainly felt that a couple of times as you progressed back into the V8 running. There's been times where you've found yourself out in clear air miraculously, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, hang on, actually, is this because I'm on a different strategy than everyone else? Is this still going to play out? And, you know, can I afford just to sit here and chill and lap away, or do I have to be pushing these laps to make sure that the guy behind me who's gaining a tenth each lap isn't going to pass me next time he goes through a round? And it's you become your own worst enemy. It's like staring at yourself in a mirror for 5 minutes. You start seeing gremlins and ghosts that aren't even there.
Yeah, you really do, and you just start overthinking everything. You start questioning your braking points. Am I hitting the right one here? Have I got a bit too deep? Have I braked a bit too early? And there's a temptation to leave a little bit on the table, but you start doing that, and it's very easy to start giving away a little bit too much, and all of a sudden that gap that you had is gone.
Yep, it is. And speaking of gaps that are depleting, the one here, you just see Shane Edgar. He's up one from where he started. We saw him obviously make that move on Tim Volk earlier, and what he sees in front of him is 3 cars that have been cruising around in choo-choo train formation the last few laps, and he's been able to slowly pull these guys in. He is circulating quicker than them as well, and he's just gone and made an absolute ripper of a pass on Steve, and that's gone and put the absolute wobbles into Phil. He didn't know what happened there, but look what's happened. This has now just opened the door for everyone else to now get into it, except Dan just out here has probably looked in his mirror a couple of times and gone, geez, I don't really know what's happening back there, but oh well, I'll keep looking forward. Phil's still where he is. Shane's still past Steve. He very nearly had Phil before as he ran wide. Steve's managed to hold on to his car and get it back under control, but now he's at risk of having Tim Volk knock on the back door. All of in a space of half a lap and 30 seconds of talking. What I said at the start, this MoSport track just seems to do weird things from time to time. Let's see if we can have a look back and see what happened to Steve and how he had a bit of a wobble. Didn't go off track, so I think I'll have to find Shane passing Steve here. That's on half, so let's try that and try again, sorry. Okay, right.
So there was contact.
And yeah, so that's what I was just wondering. Wow, that was very close.
I think Steve was trying to slot in between Phil and Shane there because he recognised that he had unsettled Phil and didn't want to take the position there, but tried to stay ahead of Shane. Unfortunately, in the end, he wasn't quite able to do that. Howdy, Nico. We are just in replay at the moment. I think that's why we're not seeing the leaderboard right now.
There we go. So, coming back to a bit of live viewage, and yes, I had toggled it off for a minute while the boys were getting all up on each other's grills and bumpers and stuff, just so we can enjoy all the action. It's all gone a wee bit spread out there now. People are probably just getting to that point where they thought, oh, this is looking a bit too exciting on the tyres. Setups might be just starting to feel a wee bit different as the fuel comes down out of them now. It's amazing how much a car's stability and feeling of groundedness that it can have while it's running more fuel in it, as that depletes, just how wildly that can have an effect overall on your car, where it positions, how it turns in, how it grips to the road, and all those little minute changes as each lap goes by and the fuel comes out has a wee bit more of an impact on the tyre warmth and wear. So what was once minute changes and slips of position across the track then starts getting to become a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, the big challenge there as well is there's not a lot of adjustability that these guys have in these cars now as the race goes on. In the Gen 2 cars, you could play with your roll bars through the stint to manage how the car behaves over the fuel load and as the tyres go off. They don't have that available to them now. The only thing they have got mechanically is brake bias. They can tune that around to control how their car turns into the corner, and then electronically they can adjust their throttle mat, which can just help them if those rear tyres are starting to go off. They can introduce a gentler throttle curve to help them get off the corner a bit more cleanly.
Yep, that's so we are approaching what would be the halfway point in the race. I wonder if anyone might try and react a little bit earlier, see if they can shake themselves into doing something different. See a wee bit of a light flash there from Tin Vork towards Shane. Morse code for hello.
I think Jonathan Turner could be in a good position to come in early here and try and get an undercut, because he's about 8/10 behind Steve Down at the moment, so he's already got a little bit of fresh air ahead of him. He's got some momentum, but he's close enough that he will be aware that those guys are there, and yeah, I think he's a prime candidate to get in, get some fresh tyres on, get absolutely fresh air in front of him,
Yep,
and be able to just carry on in very similar rhythm to what he's already doing with that little bit of a gap ahead of him.
it certainly sounds like a good option to try these moments where you've got to try. It all depends on how much you're willing to risk for reward.
In saying that as well, as you alluded to a little bit earlier, as we've got Phil Carpenter and Dan Nolan going side by side up the back straight, and with Phil getting back into P2 he is for the moment. Does he make it stick into the final sequence here? Looked like he just had to lean on Dan a little bit to stop him firing back down the inside, and it looks like he has made that one stick. For now, at least Tim Volk comes into the lane, so he is the first to jump at that undercut threat. And what I was getting at earlier is, as you suggested earlier, what you don't want to do is get caught up in trying to undercut someone that you're not actually racing in the long run. So it's important in that first stint that once things settle down, you do figure out who you're actually racing and make sure that you're strategizing to try and get ahead of them, where if you end up strategizing to jump somebody that you're probably not racing long term, it can end up hurting you a lot more later on.
There we go. And yes, out of those two cars that came through, Tim Vork and Thomas McColl, both of their stops in the low 11-second grade there. Tim at a 11.18 and Tom there 11.42. I'm sure we will see a few more people come in this time. as we have hit halfway through this race. There's Dan taking his one coming in, and Shane Edgar also reacting to that, closing that gap down a wee bit, and also Steve Darren equally closing down that gap there as well. So assuming that if any of them has been able to save a little bit of fuel and don't have to sit here in the pits for as long as the others, it should be good for possibly making a quick positional change on the way out. Let's see where the money drops for these ones. Dan, another one at 11.42. The other boy is still sitting there. Steve Darren, 12.45. Shane Edgar, 14.97, longest stop so far. Bill Kilger, done and dusted, 11.5 flat for him. And Brian Rigger bringing his car into a stop for the Misfits Racing team. How's his stop going to look? Has he been on par with the rest of the boys? That's a very long stop for Brian. Total of 23 seconds there for Brian. Heath Mahone out of the lead and coming into the pits this time round. Phil Carpenter choosing not to stop and going on by.
So worth noting as well, Tim Volk, when he came to the pits, he had Shane Edgar, I believe, between himself and Dan Nolan, and there was also what looked like probably close to a couple of seconds between him and Dan, where now Tim is right on Dan after Dan came out of the pits. So
Yep.
that undercut proved quite effective there. He's just going to catch a little bit of traffic here as Paul Fulton rejoins. Actually, Paul Fulton yet to pit and just getting in amongst these guys.
Yeah, and
He was caught up on that. Sorry, he
No,
was caught up in that
you're
lap
good.
one drama.
Yes, he was. And I was going to say, and it's good to see where he's currently positioned there at the moment. He finds himself in 8th spot. Currently, no positional changes, but circulating nicely. Once again, this is not a track for everybody. It's one that you either really click with and you do well at, or I think there's some complexities of the turns being on cambered, off camber, up and down over the gradients. They just throw people, and they just can't seem to work it out how to stitch together.
Couple of Team West cars into the pits together. I think it was Nico that pointed out earlier that the Team West boys are sticking together, so much so that they're pitting together.
Yeah. I suppose they've been practicing through the week, working on their strategies. So there's Dan Turner leaving there with a 12.3, and Wayne Hartnell just escaping there now out of the pit lane. It was a 16.6. Looking at 3 more cars left to come in. Phil Carpenter is going to be an interesting one. I'd say he would be wanting to come back in around now or next lap.
Yeah, with Phil having just got past Dan when Dan pitted, and as he does come in now, so we're going to see how it pans out with what we've already seen on the undercut for Tim versus Dan. I think we could see Dan get the jump on Phil here and maybe even come out with a little bit of a gap. We should see Heath go back through to the lead. He was our leader before the pit stops, and he's first of the cars that had already pitted before this lap, and this should cleanse everybody out now. So Heath does come through to the lead. Phil's sitting off now. Dan Nolan coming around turn 1 and has got past, and I think even Tim Volk is going to get
Yep,
the jump
he
on Phil
did.
Carpenter. So very strong undercut result for both of those guys. But now Phil has fresh tyres on, and compared to Tim and Dan, he's got 4 laps fresher tyres than Tim and 3 laps fresher tyres than Dan. So doesn't sound like much, but it will make a difference later on in the race. It might not be an immediate difference, but come lap 30, you're going to find that Tim and Dan will be starting to struggle, and Phil might just have a little bit more underneath him, and it'll
Yep.
look like he had slightly better pace anyway in that first stint as well.
That's as we have had said before, it's not over until Wayne sings. Oh, sorry, I mean Fat Lady. Oh, they're both the same, really, aren't they?
I don't even know what to say to that. Having met Wayne,
I know it's
yeah,
it's the complete opposite. But the people of the world do not need to know. Go, and here we go. Phil starting to put that pressure on Tim, and a little bit of a show of the nose was all it took for him to get on by. During that wee moment as well, Tom McColl's had a wee whoopsie, and is allowed
a wee what?
a wee whoopsie. A wee whoopsie, and allowed his teammate Dan Turner to blow by. So we have a looky here. Carrying too much speed. Ran
that is a brutal corner for that. Downhill, a little bit off cam, but as soon as you get out of that groove, it just keeps pulling you out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a look inside the car on that one and see if we can break down that one a little bit more. Just look at that understeer for days.
Yeah, cranking the lock in, and it just wants to keep going outside. He actually did quite well as well, because often by the time you hit that grass and lose a whole lot more grip, it just sails out towards the wall. But he managed to keep it relatively close to the track and rejoined, only losing that one position. Phil Carpenter sweating all over the back of Dan Nolan now, so Phil already putting those pressure tyres to good use and putting the pressure on, but it's one thing to get to that rear bumper and under that rear wing, it's another thing to get around the car as Tim just drops that under traction, exiting that hairpin. He did make contact with the concrete barrier as well. He's picked up some splitter damage as Phil goes to the outside on Dan Nolan. They're going to go side by side, a little bit of a rub through the mid corner. Dan holds onto the position for now. Thought about trying to slip back down the inside there, but not quite able to get there. And
still
Dan,
great race.
Yeah, absolutely great racing. Dan holding on to P2 for the moment, but he is really having to fight for it.
Isn't it impressive just to see and hear how much work Phil is doing with that car to try and get it to play ball?
And that was a great shot there through that downhill left-hand as well, as they do have a little bit of a touch here down towards the hairpin. More of a touch. Phil just parking his car in the right place so that Dan couldn't do the switchback there. So I don't think there was as much to that as it looked.
No.
But the initial part of that, where they did go side by side down the hill, when you're on the roof with Phil and catching how much understeer he had, but he was able to just gather it up enough to give Dan the space, and Dan was very aware to where Phil was and just positioned his car in the right place to just barely give him enough space to run.
And
Jamie's putting a move on Steve Darren.
yeah, and that was quite a well set up bit of a move there.
Oh, Steve looks to come back at him though.
Oh, this is great. Oh, Steve just grabbing that little bit extra throttle, but he's going to stick on the. Oh, I was going to say he's going to stick on the outside, but that's no man's land out there, and where it all gets a wee bit marbly and not as warm and sticky, and he's just rolled off the outside of the edge there.
So now that Dan's lost that position to Phil Carpenter, what he needs to do now is get his head down, focus on hitting his marks. He's got a little bit of a gap back to Shane, but Shane looking pretty quick on this stint. He's just put that move on Steve. Shane and Dan did pit on the same lap, but he needs to just make sure he gets his head down, hits his marks, does the laps that he needs to do, and if Shane gets to the back of him in the late stages of the race, then he can focus on what he needs to do to keep him behind. But certainly at the moment, it just needs to be concentrating on what he's got in front of him right now and just driving that car to the best of his abilities.
Indeed. Everyone else starting to settle down a wee bit as they're looking at only 8 more laps of racing to go, but these Team West boys here sitting on positions 9th and 10th are still giving each other the wee bit of run for the money every once in a while.
We always tend to see the Team West guys close together, battling it out on track, don't we? Whether it's V8s or GTEs, or even back in the GT3 days.
Yep.
Even when they all ran the hypercars in the HPR series, they all seem to be very close together and battling it out on track, and it's great to see that continuing here tonight.
Yeah, and I was just about to point that out as well. And not only do they tend to find themselves in grouping groups together, obviously because they do a lot of practice together, they're probably finding similar race speed across the board. Certainly, people being quicker in other areas over others, and helping that performance build across as a team. But teammates or not, once these guys get into a position of attack or a potential pass can be made, they don't hold back. They don't sit behind each other and keep lolling around playing Thomas the Tank Engine choo-choo driver games. They will seize any opportunity to make the racing spicy and get in there, find that gap, and make you happy about being in there.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that tends to be the way the team game is played in the sim, at least at our level at SuperCars NZ. I know there's some pro teams out there where there may be team orders and protect what you've got and don't crash into each other, but here at SuperCars NZ it is all about having fun, and as much as you get guys that tend to group together into teams, have a little bit of fun together, it does all come down to that fun, and the fun comes in the on-track battles. If they've got the opportunity to do that, they will always go and do that, whether it's Team West or Team Jigsaw or Passion Sim Racing. Nobody feels good about taking out a teammate, but then I don't think
No,
there's many people in the league that feel good about taking anybody out.
no, that's right. And it's across the Misfits boys as well. You know, you look at their groupings across the years. These boys have found themselves in a position where they didn't always used to be teammates. They've had good hard battles against one another, and that initial love-hate relationship of each other can develop into a bit of a camaraderie, and mateship then builds, and you realise, oh, actually we're pretty similar pace. We'd probably do alright if we paired up together and did some racing as a group, and so forth, moving into like endurance-styled racing events, or you get together and you try to help build each other up. And that's the thing that's been a cool thing about this racing league that I've experienced over the years, and even just listening to the guys having their yarns before down in the other channel. You know, you mentioned the other teams outside of our league. They might be teammates and they may have particular orders in place, but we have a couple of guys going around and find a bit of a setup that seems to work for the racetrack, and after making a few tweaks, and that just sort of gets openly shared around everyone, because what's the point of going out and racing and just completely demolishing everyone week after week when you can sit in and around each other and have these cool battles that we get to watch.
You couldn't agree more. I would much rather be in the thick of a battle for 15th place than be out front by 15 seconds.
Yep. And we certainly don't take anything away from the people who can, like Heath Mahone here tonight has certainly found himself in a good groove of things. He's been able to take his gap out there over second place to just over 5 seconds, nearly 5.5 seconds there, of Phil Carpenter, who's done a good job of actually pushing on and extending the gap back from himself to Dan. So it's good to see. These are the guys that have intentions on wanting to aspire to grander things in the championship. They want to get up there and race the big boys in Div 1. Get in there and find themselves as part of a... that was a very nice move, wasn't it? That was like textbook. Like if you were ever going to show someone a video on what a crisscross move was, that one there, they wrote the song and the manual.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan showed great patience there as Shane sent it down the inside. He left the room for him, let him get in there deep, and took the place right back on the exit of the corner. Shane's managed to fire it down the inside into the final corner though, but again, just costing himself that momentum on corner exit, and Dan gets the drive away. So he's giving the aggressive moves at the moment, but he might just need a little bit more finesse to pull it off here against Dan.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Dan, were you thinking, okay, I've just got to keep things calm, cool and collected, hit those markers, there's 3 laps left.
Oh, and there's a chance for Steve to get involved here as well if Shane tries to fight it a bit too hard, but he's got the nose ahead to the go 3 wide. Shane's got in there quite deep again, he loses the rear in the gravel. Dan has nowhere to go though. Steve going to be able to get the overlook now. He has a big...
Whoa!
I thought he was hitting straight into that right rear wheel of Dan's there. He did a great job to avoid that.
That was something right there. It's not over yet. Dan wants that position back. 2 more laps of racing to go, and I'm quite happy that it's still just as exciting as what we saw come turn 1, lap 1.
Yeah, plenty of excitement going on out there. Tim Volk just sitting in front of Jonathan Turner at the moment. I did see Nico asked in the comments, is Tim running out of tyres? Well, he dropped back because he had that incident earlier on, and I think maybe did just take a bit out of his rear tyres when that happened, and potentially just with the damage that he's got on the front of that car as well, that might be costing him a little bit. Oh, Steve, I think maybe running out of rear tyres because he's had another moment out of that hairpin.
It was close.
I can certainly relate to the moment that he had on the previous lap when he was alongside Dan. When you get that opportunity to get a run off a slow corner and go side by side with another car, it can be very tempting to just try and squeeze that throttle a little bit harder and light up the rears.
Very much so.
Just looking at the times on the left of the screen there as well, and that gap. Oh, is this contact between JT and Tim?
Yep.
So that one's ended in tears. But yeah, that gap that Heath had 5 seconds over Phil Carpenter earlier on, that's come down to 4.1, or just under 4.2. Is that the pace that Phil's got, or has has Heath just backed it off a little bit just to consolidate in the last few laps? Either way, I think Phil's going to need to take out considerably more than he is at the moment to get anywhere near threatening Heath for that race one.
Yep, indeed, and the final lap is underway currently. Heath just beginning that one. We'll have a transition over there soon while these boys are keeping things interesting.
Oh, more contact in that one.
Yep.
Certainly Tim was well and truly down the inside there, and I just think Wayne just didn't know he was, Jonathan JT didn't know he was there and tried to turn in.
You just never know. We saw before how many of the guys were suffering from understeer issues there, as well as Wayne draws back up alongside there momentarily. Hasn't quite finished. Letting know Tim is that he's still here, but this man here, he's been clean all the way through the race. Qualified in P2, got the early, the good, clean, nice jump away there on Phil Carpenter, and he has brought it across the line. P1, well done, Heath Mahone. Phil Carpenter, great recovery drive. He certainly had the battles on tonight, trying to pick his way through the crowd. Shane Edgar, I would say pretty similar. Had a good run there, starting in 6th to get up 3 spots into 3rd. Dan Nolan and teammate Steve Darren coming across the line, both down 1 position each respectively, 4th and 5th. Dan Turner up 4, first car home from Team West, just ahead of Tom McCall, finishing up 5 spots into position 7. Jonathan Turner and Wayne Hartnell 8th and 9th. Tim Volk not having a very good run there towards what was the end of the night, or since halfway, down 5. Bill Kilger, we didn't pop onto him too much. I was sort of hoping that he was just going to be able to get through and not have any other major issues, and he only dropped a couple from the start, and he's pushed through to them with that. And as you said, new teammate for you there, mate, PSR Racing, Paul Fulton, did a nice job of circulating those laps, finishing on the lead lap with everyone else. Only down 4 spots to finish there in 12th. Brian Rigger brings up the rear of the field, P13. Matty McDonald, DNF, who wasn't there at the start. So, there we go. That's your results for this evening's Div 2 crew here as part of the SimLab's Gen 3 V8 Round 8. Can't believe we are here.
Yes, so 8 rounds done, 4 rounds remaining in the season. How nuts is that?
So it's very, very crazy indeed. I see we've got a wild Bill has appeared in the broadcasting lounge.
Thought I'd have a nosy at what you're up to.
Yeah. How did you find the evening there, Bill?
Tiptoeing around the track, mate. She was a knife edge of crashing every lap, every corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hard work.
We certainly saw a lot of wheel work being done from the boys coming up over top of crest, full left hand down, and the car's still going straight, and you're trying to manage that with brake and accelerator to actually get the turn done, and then equally when you're putting the car back under power to try and move down the straight, you're adding all the amounts of corrective steering to keep it pointed in a straight line. So not the easiest car. It's been brought up a couple of times in the last week. Not the easiest car to get a handle on. And
you battle understeer, then you've got oversteer. So
yeah.
Anyway, the fast guys seem to be able to do it. So I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just an old slow bugger. That's all.
Well, we actually had a chat about that earlier. You know, obviously, you hear from the chit chats from the group. Yes, we do have the faster guys who probably got a bit more time to be able to put in the effort, or they've got the
Skill, mate. It comes down to skill.
Yeah, they they sort of tend to move towards the front. But I would say, as far as balancing across the field, those fast guys are certainly not as fast as what we used to see from the Gen 2 cars, and our newer guys or slower drivers are now more in the mix of racing than what they are out of it and down multiple laps on the racing as well. So it certainly balanced things out, but I think the overall is people certainly finding it a tricky car to get their head around.
Yep. All right, boys. I'll catch you later.
All good, Bill. Thank you for joining us.
Bill.
No worries, boys. See you later.
Yeah, mate. There we go. There's some things to take away. Not too sure. Where we're at. No one else hanging around for a chit chat, so I think we're all good there, mate.
Yeah, I think so. It was certainly a good night of racing, plenty of action. I enjoyed every minute of it, but I mean, I'm quite happy to call it my last V8 stream for now, just because I'll be back racing in the car as long as we can get the broadcasting lounge all covered off.
Yep.
For next week.
Yep. Yeah, there might be a wee bit of an old reunion there. It might be myself with a little bit of Wayno joining in for some commentaries, but we won't say anything to him just yet. We don't want to scare him off into the wild. It's like a deer. You don't look into his eyes, and sometimes you see magical things happen.
Yeah, that's right. We wouldn't want to scare them off.
But no, it's been an absolute pleasure once again, Shane. And like I said, I'm happy that your road to recovery has been going well, and the clot in the old leg there's shifted on. The doc's happy for you get back into normal swings of life again, and to see you back out there in the field having some fun doing some racing will be well and truly greeted by myself, and I'm sure you've got your little group of fans that would be happy to see that too.
Yeah, me, myself, and I.
Not mum. Mum not a fan. Mum
Well,
Shane.
she's a fan of real racing, but she doesn't. She doesn't. I don't think she manages to quite be able to get her head around sitting down and watching the virtual stuff.
Yep. Oh, I see. Oh, you'll have to just keep sending her those links, mate. She'll get there eventually. It's been good. So, anyway, we'll round this up. It's been a pleasure once again to do that with you, and I look forward to seeing what happens over the next few weeks and into next season. It has been round 8 of the SimLab Gen3 Div 2 crew here at MoSport. Tune in with us on Thursday night for our GTEs. And once again, a thank you to Racecrafts for joining us as the Race Week sponsor. Certainly very awesome pleasure to have you with your continued support and behind us here at the Broadcasting Lounge and with SuperCars NZ. Check out Racecrafts there on Facebook, and I believe they may have a web page as well for your sim related products, anything from button boxes to LED lights to all the other little gizmos and gadgets that keep some bit of fun happening in life. Go and hit up Chris and see what he's got happening over there. Racecrafts. Anyway, Shano, thank you very much, and to the folks at home who have tuned in once again, I bid thee thy well a good night, adieu.